All right, Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
Let's get to it. So, the latest criticism of President Trump's strategy in Iran is coming from an unlikely place. Piers Morgan, someone who has had a friendly relationship with the president in the past. But speaking on the BBC, Morgan didn't mince words when asked about the administration's goals in the Middle East.
Do you think he has a clue what he's trying to achieve in the Middle East?
No, I don't. And I think he's thought that he could pull a Venezuela here, decapitate the leadership of Iran, and it would all get settled quite quickly.
He went on to say this.
All the mission statements he's laid out have changed day by day, sometimes hour by hour. It was going to be regime change. It was going after the nuclear capability, which we've been assured only 10 months ago had been dismantled already.
Morgan's point speaks to something deeper about this conflict. The strategy, or at least the public explanation of it, has shifted repeatedly. So 2 weeks ago, the United States launched a war aimed at toppling the Iranian regime. The expectation inside the administration, according to reporting in the Washington Post, was that the American military power could deliver a swift and decisive outcome. President Trump reportedly believed Iran might even capitulate before escalating. But military dominance doesn't always translate to strategic control. Washington Post reports that before the first strike, General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, warned the president that Iran's most powerful response wouldn't necessarily be military. It would be economic. U.S. officials have long believed Tehran could close the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries about 1/5 of the world's oil supply. And that's exactly what's happening now. Iran has blocked tankers and struck cargo ships in the area, sending global energy markets into turmoil and creating what analysts describe as the largest oil supply shock in history. The ripple effects go far beyond the battlefield. Higher energy prices, economic instability, and fears of stagflation right at home. Now, Piers Morgan touched on Iran's strategy as well.
By controlling the Strait of Hormuz and by attacking its neighboring Gulf states in the touristy areas, they are sending a signal that we can't beat you necessarily militarily, but economically we can paralyze you.
Meanwhile, the human and financial cost is mounting. The war is costing billions of dollars every single week. At least 13 Americans have been killed and more than 140 wounded. That U.S. strike hit a girls' school in Iran and killed roughly 175 people, most of them children. And despite the assassination of Iran's supreme leader and major damage to its military infrastructure, the regime hasn't collapsed. In fact, Tehran quickly replaced him with his hardline son, signaling that the government intends to endure rather than surrender. That's the reality of modern conflict. Toppling leadership isn't the same thing as winning a war. Military superiority can change the battlefield, but it doesn't always change the political outcome. And right now, 2 weeks in, the central question isn't whether the United States can overpower Iran's military. It's whether the strategy behind this war fully accounted for the ways Iran could fight back, and whether that miscalculation is now shaping a much longer, much more complicated conflict than anyone expected.
You say we don't know what the objective is, but I think we do now know what the objective is. I think we're seeing it in real time. The objective is not regime change. It is not to cause some kind of democratic movement rising up of the people. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know that this Mujtaba Khamenei, he exercises nominal control over the government right now. He's injured. He's not been seen in public. We actually don't know really who's in charge.
But after that, there's a long list of other people, and then after that, there's a long list of military personnel that would be in charge next.
We don't care. We're taking out their military capabilities. We have decimated their ships, their ability to wage war on us or on Israel. That was the objective. We are making it so that we are safer and our ally is safer.
And economically, the country is fighting back by strangulating a major shipping route for oil that goes to countries around the world. Economically, they're impacting tourism in the Gulf states around and intentionally bombing major tourist areas for people that we consider allies and have current business deals with, including that peace plan that's supposed to help out with Gaza that business leaders in the Middle East have already said we might pull out of because of this. So economically, they're definitely impacting us. It wasn't about whether they have more power than the two most powerful militaries in the world, which would be America and Israel. It wasn't about that. It was about now they're trying to strangulate using economic decisions and closing the Strait of Hormuz. And you even said it yourself. The president doesn't seem like he had a good plan and this was all thought through. And you're saying, now I understand the mission. It's because finally the administration got aligned with what they want to say the mission is out loud. Out of the administration's mouth and leadership, we heard several different reasons why we're in this war, several different goals. We heard the president on day one say the Iranian people can rise up and decide this might be their moment for democracy. Well, he said it. So that's why I was confused, not because I made things up. He led me to be confused about these things. And now he's deciding that there's a new mission statement, but he didn't consider the fact that all Americans will be affected by his decisions because Iran has access to the Strait of Hormuz. And he was told that, according to the Washington Post, in advance and still went forward. So I think America's question is, what was the plan? What was the follow through? And how do we end this in a short time if they're willing to fight an economic war?
I think it was confusing. I think the administration made a mistake not all being on the same page, flirting with the idea that the point of this really was regime change. And of course, I think it was a terrible idea not to have Congress vote on a declaration of war. This is a war. This is something that should have been debated and discussed, and then we would have been clearer on what the objective is if they'd said it ahead of time and tried to get people to vote on it. We were forced to try to figure out what the objective is later. But in fairness, I think I do understand the objective now. I think they're being clear about what it is. It is not about regime change. It is about destroying their military. And we are doing that spectacularly. We're obliterating it fully. We are blunting their instruments of war very, very effectively. And so as we talk about the consequences economically that we're going to face, yes, higher oil prices, the shipping problems through the Strait of Hormuz, yes, there are consequences for us. The administration should be honest about that. It should say, well, yes, this is necessary and important, and it's going to make your life a little bit less comfortable for a little bit.
And we're like other countries too, calling everybody, bring your ships to the Strait of Hormuz. Any random countries want to jump in this war we didn't ask for? Come on, bring your ships and hopefully have people die over this war that you're not actually in, that we never declared, which we're not calling a war, but actually is a war. He also said that Iran wants to have a ceasefire. The president yesterday said that they are asking for a ceasefire and he's not ready to negotiate yet, as if that's what's happening. And maybe that is to be true. But, Iran's foreign minister was also on the Sunday shows and he said, absolutely not. Why would we ask for a ceasefire in a war we didn't start? And so he's like, that's not our move. So all we're hearing from Iranian leadership.
They enjoy more bombs dropping on you.
That's what I'm saying. It looks like an endless war. Show me what an out looks like. What does an outcome look like? So we bomb everything. They're still holding up oil prices.
Iran
They're still
says
holding
uncle.
up. No, but that's not happening. They're doubling down. This is not the same thing as a 12-day war. We passed the 12th day.
Why should we blink? We're the superpower.
We shouldn't blink, but we started it with no laid out plan about what winning looks like. The president said effectively that this was done. And that
winning is them saying, we're sorry, we'll be a good country now.
And then coming up with a deal that looks very close to the nuclear deal that Obama had in place.
Correct.
So we did all this to circle back to what Obama had in place in 2015?
It's going to be that, but better.
I guess. Tell me how different. They were getting rid of like 80 to 90% of uranium. Only had enough to just power the country. What else?
Realistically, I don't know that it will be any different. I didn't support withdrawing from that agreement in the first place.
Neither did all the countries he's asking to send ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
Just stuck with that deal. For one thing, once you make a deal, you might as well keep it. But Trump's perspective was, well, I didn't make that deal. Someone else did. So.
And we circle back to the same point that he just wants his name on something. Just to say that he did it.
But we're going to get that deal in place, or they're going to get bombed and bombed and bombed and bombed.
So it could go on for 20 years if they're willing to get bombed and bombed, and if Russia decides to support them in any way and get bombed and bombed. So
if they're willing to get blown up, then they're going to get blown up. I don't know what to say. What do you, like, that's how war works.
Well, the president said this wouldn't be an endless war, so eventually it will if they decide not to surrender.
They will throw in the towel.
So far, we've miscalculated what they would do. They're up in the ante by now, blocking a big portion of the world.
I don't know that we miscalculated that. We should have. It was a huge mistake to not foresee that was going to happen. If they really didn't think that was going to happen, then they're very foolish. I think they did know that was going to happen, and they don't want to say. But the reality is, just gonna have to deal with higher oil prices for a little bit.
All right, Kid Rock is speaking out against Live Nation and Ticketmaster after leaked internal messages allegedly show employees mocking customers. Stay with us.